were you doing on October 19th, 2009? We dodged a hot bullet on that day, and it makes me glad that Hollywood's movies are fiction or fictionalized accounts of real events. If the opposite was true, we wouldn't be communicating right now. We would be residual space dust because that's what happened in the 2009 blockbuster movie, Knowing. In that film, everyone except a select few was killed in a giant solar storm. The science fiction thriller starred Nicolas Cage, Rose Byrne, Lara Robinson, Chandler Canterbury, and Ben Mendelsohn. I found it to be an exciting and thought-provoking film with a pretty deep plot. It's about the sun putting an end to earthly life as we know it, but just how geographically credible is the plot in Knowing? Hey, let's take geography to Hollywood and find out. I hope you'll join me. In Knowing, our hero, if I can use that term loosely, is a grieving physicist named John Kessler. He's mourning the death of his wife and mother of Caleb, the couple's only son. His wife was recently killed in a mysterious fire, which is something of a foreshadow. Of course, Dr. Kessler is not a run-of-the-mill physics professor. He is a specialist in astrophysics and works at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, otherwise known as MIT. In case you don't know, MIT is in another academic solar system, so to speak, to lesser technical institutes. Aside from Caltech Poly and my alma mater, Tennessee Tech, there are few science-based universities that rival MIT in rigor and academic excellence. At this point in the film, we should be impressed with the film's cultural and geographic setting. We learn that Professor Kessler studies solar storms. Normally, that wouldn't be a very dramatic occupation for most of us because the sun emits energy within a rather limited range of output. That's a good thing for us, or we wouldn't last long. The Earth has a natural defense against extreme solar radiation. It's called the magnetic field. But it's not capable of stopping all the extreme solar winds emitted by the sun. You can see our Earth's magnetic field at work protecting us from most of those winds. On clear evenings in the far northern and southern latitudes, the Earth's magnetic field lights up the sky to form the aurora borealis in the north and aurora australis in the south. The plot in Knowing centers on telepathic communications from some otherworldly, pale humanoids that are simply called the Beings, as well as the contents of a time capsule that was buried in 1959. The place of burial of the time capsule was William Doss Elementary, a fictional school located in the non-fictional Lexington, Massachusetts. The capsule contained letters from students written back in 1959. One of the letters was penned by a troubled little girl named Lucinda. The letter contained a series of seemingly random numbers. After being removed from the capsule, Lucinda's letter is handed to Caleb, the professor's son, who happens to be receiving visits and telecommunications from the Beings. Meanwhile, across town, Lucinda's granddaughter Abby is also receiving visits and communications from the Beings. Professor Kessler, meanwhile, becomes fascinated by the letter and discovers that there are patterns in the numbers. After making a connection with Lucinda's daughter Diana and granddaughter Abby, Professor Kessler downs a bottle of whiskey, loses sleep, and figures out that the numbers show dates, applications, and the numbers of deaths for events that occurred since 1959. He becomes especially concerned, to say the least, when he and Diana learn that the last entry in the letter applies to October 19, 2009, and instead of a number for a casualty count, it says EE for everyone else. What to do? His apparent best friend, who's played by Ben Mendelsohn, is a professor of metaphysics at MIT, but he's slow to be convinced that something bad is going to happen. Kessler finally convinces him that the end of life as they know it will occur on October 19th, and the cause of humanity's demise will be a super solar flare producing 100 microteslas of radiation. Diana also took a bit of convincing to accept the fact that a super flare was about to occur. Out of sympathy for the single mom and her daughter as well as Caleb, Kessler doesn't tell them that there's no way to survive the super flare. He even offers them hope by telling them that they will be safe in a deep cave. Spoiler alert, he lied. So, where does the Knowing stand in regard to getting its geography right? Let's tackle the obvious questions first. Is it possible for the sun to produce a super flare in the range of 100 microteslas? If so, would that mean the end of life as we know it? The answer to both of those questions is unfortunately yes. We dodged such an event on July 23, 2012, when a supersolar flare just missed the Earth. According to Dr. Daniel Baker of the University of Colorado, if it had hit, we would still be picking up the pieces. NASA said that if it struck the Earth, it would have knocked civilization back to the 18th century. Beyond those two important questions, there's a wide separation between real and movie geographies. For example, the movie is set in Lexington and Cambridge, Massachusetts. The film shows an aerial view of MIT and the exteriors of the Museum of Science in Boston and the Haystack Observatory also in Massachusetts. You may be surprised to learn that most of the remaining scenes were shot a long way from the Bay State. William Doss Elementary School, which does not exist in real life, was nonetheless appropriately named after an American Revolutionary hero who, like Paul Revere, rode his horse about the countryside warning the Minutemen that the British were coming. In a similar way, the movie uses the school as a venue for warning about the sun's looming storm. Beyond that historical parallel, the geography around the school looks right, but is it? Nope. The school is actually Camberwell High School, and it's located in Melbourne, Australia. All the home and garden scenes were shot in Mount Macedon, a small town about 40 miles northwest of Melbourne. The interior of the Haystack Observatory in Massachusetts was actually filmed in the Australian synchrotron. One of the film's most impressive sequences involves the airplane crash scene that's supposed to have occurred on an interstate just outside of Lexington, Massachusetts. The scene was shot in one continuous take that lasts around 2 minutes. But was it really filmed on an interstate in Massachusetts? Nope. The plane crash scene was shot just outside of Melbourne, Australia, along a nearly finished stretch of highway called the Geelong Reed Road. That's Geelong Ring Road. Beyond the movie's technical details, its personnel have a decidedly Australian presence. Alex Proyas, the director, lives in Australia, and 3 of Cage's co-stars are also from Australia. Rose Byrne as Diana, Ben Mendelsohn, the professor's metaphysics friend, and Laura Robinson, who played both Lucinda and Abby. She is, too, a native of Australia and lives in Melbourne. She could have ridden her bicycle to the set. To the chagrin of some critics like Philip French, writing in The Guardian, there were a number of images and references in the movie that suggest a supernatural, even biblical basis for the plot. French even derogatively claimed that Christian fundamentalists would be presumably inspired by the film to engage in a family hug session while imagining themselves waking up to meet St. Peter at the pearly gates. Perhaps French was thinking about 2 Peter chapter 3, where it is prophesied the earth has a rendezvous with a fiery demise. 2 Peter 3:10 is quite specific, and I quote, "But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up." End of quote. Knowing serves up other allusions to biblical characters and events. For instance, the name Caleb also identifies a Hebrew leader in the biblical journey to the Promised Land. While looking for evidence at Lucinda's abandoned childhood home, Kessler and Diana locate an image of Matthias Marion's engraving titled Ezekiel's Chariot Vision. In the image, a great sun is depicted. Finally, Caleb and Abby are saved from the superflare by the beings and placed on a fresh new planet. At the heart of their new pastoral home is a single large tree. Is the tree symbolic of the Garden of Eden's tree of life as mentioned in the book of Genesis? Some critics certainly think so. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for joining me on this geographic journey through knowing. If you liked the video, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I look forward to seeing you next time here on The Vantage Point.